Are you ready to get started?
I am ready.
All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about all things nutrition, and even more than that, other health principles that you guys need to know. And we just did our Resolve seminar a couple weeks ago, and we went through this live. But I still find that a lot of people have questions about nutrition. So we really want to dive in and give you guys all the information that you need to be successful, whether you're doing this challenge or just in life in general. We're going to be sorting through a lot of myths and untruths and uncovering a lot of we have a lot to go over. So we're going to do our best, and I promise I'll get those questions answered.
Yeah, a lot to go over in a little time to do it. And it actually all starts, let's go ahead and just flip to the next slide. So Maximize Living. So I'm Dr. Fred Roberto's, my wife, Kimberly, co-author. She's the co-author of the Maximize Living Nutrition Plans book. Hundreds of thousands of people are following those plans. Brilliant book. If you don't have it, you need to get it. It just makes nutrition very simple. And a lot of the principles that you'll hear today, you'll see in the book, along with tons of great recipes. And there's some new books coming out too that will replace that, update it, and just give you a lot more information. So look for that coming down the pike. Now, Maximize Living, we're a global wellness organization. We want to represent the laws and principles that God gave us to be healthy and well. There absolutely is a natural order. You either play the game of life by the rules, but if you break the rules, you pay the price. And so you either line up with that natural order or you don't. And if you don't, then you become another statistic like many other people. Now, we're charged with the mission, and more than a job, this is a mission for us. This is a calling for us. We feel like we need to be representative of those principles, and we need to teach as many people these principles, because 100% of the time, every single time, when you line up with these principles, you're going to give yourself the best chance to reach your full complement for life, to be healthy and well, and to, most importantly, serve out your purpose. If you've ever heard me talk, I probably say it every time. I believe that every single person on the planet's got a purpose, but it's hard to serve your purpose if you're sick, suffering, or dead. So these principles with Maximize Living are here on the screen. We want to talk about getting your body to function and heal at 100%. Most people don't equate that with chiropractic, but that's exactly what it's about, as you'll learn towards the end of this presentation, even though it's heavily on the second essential, which is the nutrition piece. And you always have to make sure that your mind's in the right place. And really, a webinar like this or any of the workshops is nothing more than getting an upgrade in the software that you're running on. And when you're thinking along the lines of the truth, and that's called wisdom, an understanding of knowledge. And then you'll give yourself the best chance to act on that and to end up with the best outcome. So you've always got to be improving your mindset. You've got to make sure your body's exercising. You have genetic requirement for a certain amount of movement every day. You either meet that requirement or you don't. You break the rules, you pay the price. And then you've got to eliminate the toxins, keep your body as pure as it can. So now let's get started into the nutrition side of things. And I want to open this up with an important concept, and it's built into the title of this. So nutrition, let food be thy medicine. I'm not sure if anyone has heard that quote before, but that's a quote by Hippocrates. And this is important to fully understand this, because I think this is where a lot of people go sideways in their nutrition, especially today, because it seems to be the in vogue thing. People are realizing that medicine has been failing us miserably. We take more medications than any other culture on the planet Earth, and yet we're the sickest culture. We've got more cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, depression, neurological conditions, autoimmune conditions. You just name it, it's worse than it's ever been before. And so obviously, if medicine's equaled health, and we take the most medicines, then we should be the healthiest culture and not the sickest. Health doesn't come from the outside in, it comes from the inside out. So let's break down what Hippocrates really meant. And Hippocrates, he walked the planet probably about 500 years before Jesus Christ was on the planet. And he was really touted to be the godfather of healthcare. In fact, he is officially coined the father of modern medicine, which I find to be strangely ironic, because his principles have literally nothing to do with what modern medicine is today. In fact, they have everything to do with maximized living and those laws and principles. So I think it's important to dive in and understand what Hippocrates meant by let food be thy medicine. And so I think the first thing that we need to understand is really what medicine of that time and what that day really was. And so we were talking about lotions and potions and elixirs and things like that were more associated with the treatment of symptoms, being palliative and maybe as a remedy. So something along the lines like you would get poison ivy and you can rub a root oil on there or something like that to maybe alleviate the symptoms. But by no means did Hippocrates ever believe that health came from the outside in, and that any kind of lotion or potion would ever heal the body of anything. All health and healing comes from the inside out. In fact, Hippocrates is pretty clear that even food has no healing properties to it as well. And so I know there's a big push for essential oils, and a lot of people, they're buying into that principle. But listen, essential oils don't heal anybody of anything. Listen, I am the exercise guy for Maximize Living. I run the entire exercise division of Maximize Living. Exercise has no healing properties whatsoever. None of these things have healing properties to them. We need to understand first and foremost where health and healing comes from, and then the role of these other essentials like nutrition and like exercise and keeping your body pure and the max mind piece, the role that they play in optimum health and well-being. So let me just elaborate on that from a perspective of the Hippocratic principles. Hippocrates said that the physician treats, but nature heals. And one of my favorite Hippocratic quotes is this right here. And one of my favorite talks that I did this year was all about Hippocratic principles and really understanding and diving into what Hippocrates, what he meant when he created modern healthcare. And so one of my favorite quotes, and I've been saying this for 20 years, Hippocrates said that humans are designed to be healthy as long as they are whole, mind, body, and spirit, that people are characterized by self-healing properties that come from within, an innate healing force, and that perfect health and harmony is the normal state of all life. That is not outside in thinking. You never get headaches because you have a lack of Advil. You don't get stomach aches because there's not enough Pepto-Bismol. It's not a problem with a deficiency in medications that we have these issues. There are other issues at play here that cause the body to break down and express and lessen an ideal state of health. You must be whole, mind, body, and spirit. We are physical beings with eternal souls, and we have to look at the body as such. And so we have to understand that when God made us, he made us perfect, and he gave us a power that animated us into life, and that's where all the healing comes from above, down, inside out. All we have to do is remove the interference, uncover the layer, stop the pollution. You were programmed to be amazingly healthy and well. And so if you really want to understand more of a Hippocratic principle, you can look at the terms of being pure and sufficient. Pure and sufficient. So God made us perfect. And as long as we are pure and you give the body what it needs, and herein lies the role of things like nutrition and exercise and the detox and all those components. They are support systems for the innate intelligence where all the healing power actually exists. They're support systems to that. And so you have to eat food, because that's how your body gets the nutrients that then become the living, loving, thinking clay of the human being. It's the food that you eat becomes your eyeballs and your liver and your kidneys and your spleen. So when it comes to nutrients, through the food you eat, you must obtain 2 essential fatty acids on a regular basis, and 8 essential amino acids, and 13 vitamins, and 21 minerals. And when you do that, your body becomes sufficient, and you give it the building blocks that the innate intelligence of your body will utilize in order to create the living, loving, thinking clay of a human being. And when you don't get those essential nutrients, then your body becomes insufficient or it becomes deficient. And when you put toxic loads into your body, then it becomes toxic. So the opposite of being pure and sufficient would be that you would become toxic and insufficient. And when your body's in that state, that undermines the normal expression of health. The body breaks down and then it begins to express in symptoms, sickness, and disease. And it happens over time. So when we want to talk about the most fundamental principles of good, solid nutrition, it's easy to understand and to wade through the sea of misinformation, because there's tons of bad information out there. When you understand a fundamental principle, in that God made us and he made us perfect. He made the planet and he made it perfect. And he put us on this planet to serve a purpose, to love and serve him, and to love and serve one another. And so he's not going to let us starve to death. And since the beginning of mankind, God gave us food to eat. And if you just eat that, you'll give yourself the best opportunity. When you eat the food that God put on the planet, your body knows exactly what to do with that food. And you'll find that you can eat like an elephant and look like a gazelle, because that food was made for your body. But then over the last, and it was good for a long time. And that food sustained a species since the beginning of time. But then over the last really 150 years, particularly in the United States of America, we became so brilliant and judicious, and we said we could do better than God made. And so we started genetically modifying the food, and we started adding these additives and preservatives and chemically altering the food so they could last longer on the shelves and taste more appealing and look better. And so we made this Frankenfood, and it no longer was pure. And we put that inside of our body, and it's filled with toxins, and it was insufficient and deficient in many of the nutrients that we need. And so one thing that I always like to talk about is the net effect of food. And it was Hippocrates who said that each of the substances a man's diet acts upon his body and changes it in some way. And upon these changes, his whole life depends. And so when you put good, clean, healthy food in your body utilizes it to create a healthy physical you. And your body expresses it in its optimum state, and you give yourself the best chance for healing and to reach your full complement of life. But when you put junk inside of your body breaks down and it succumbs to these issues. And over time, they have their say on the expression of health and wellness. And that's when we become broken down, sick, and diseased. And so that is the foundation principles. Those are the foundational principles. And this is what Hippocrates meant. Just do things natural and you'll give yourself the best chance.
Yeah, that was quite the intro. They didn't know they were going to get that.
But you've got to understand those principles.
Yes, it's
They're
true.
So vital.
So what does he mean by, and this is where people get confused, what is junk and what is clean food? And there's so much misinformation, and you guys will see, and hopefully you'll be outraged, and hopefully you'll be shocked at some of the things we're going to talk about. But real quick, here's a quiz. So I want each of you to introspectively take a look at yourself and be honest. So what do you value? And when it comes to your diet, this is how you know if you value it or not, right? You look at your calendar and you look at your bank account, because what you value is where you'll spend your time and your money. So if you say nutrition is important to you, but yet you're not allocating the money that you need to it, and it's not on your calendar where you're shopping and you're planning and you're cooking and all of these things, then it may not be as important as you think. So how much time are you really spending planning out your meals for the week and sourcing good quality foods? And are you really willing to pay more for those things? Because did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to pay for your health one way or another. It's on the front end and creating it, or on the back end and trying to get it back once it's lost and gone.
Those are the next words out of my mouth, literally.
I'm so sorry.
It's funny, but it's true.
I'm not talking anymore.
So it's true, though. You're going to end up with a diagnosis or a disease, and you're in the doctor's office, you're buying medications or trying to get your health back. So put the money in. It's an investment. So all of these things that we're talking about nutritionally, it's investments in your health. So think about it that way. And here's the other thing. You guys have to, and I've had to do this, and he's maybe had to do this. I don't know. Probably not as much as me. But breaking through mental barriers when it comes to nutrition and when it comes to food. There's so much conflicting information. How do you know what to do? And we hear a lot, I've tried before and nothing works. I've already done that. It doesn't work for me. You don't understand. I'm different. It's not sustainable. I can't do it. People will have very short-lived goals, meaning like I want to lose 10 pounds. They'll lose the 10 pounds and then right back to the lifestyle that they were in before. They'll think it's too hard. I don't want to be deprived. It costs too much. All of these things. And I'm sure many of you have said these things and maybe saying it right now. She's going to tell me to eat organic food and I can't afford it. So you're thinking about all of these things, but we really have to identify them. So know yourself what you're thinking so that you can help break through that, because we're going to give you the practical steps to make all those things not true. And you've been lying to yourself because none of those things are true. You can make it work.
These laws and principles will never fail you. You may fail them, but they're not going to fail you. And we're here to give you the practical resources so that you can be successful with these things. So just ask us lots of questions. Absorb the information right now, but we're here as a resource for you.
Yep. Okay. So you also have to establish a value system. And so we're going to talk about genetics in a second. I'm sure you have something to say about that too. But 90% of the diseases we face are lifestyle habits. It's not genetics. And if you look at the quote at the bottom, it says, your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear what you say. And so you have to, especially if you have children, start modeling this stuff. It's more about the lifestyle traits that you're handing down than the genetics that you're handing down.
Yeah, it's called epigenetics, or how your lifestyle actions affect your genes.
Yep. So I like to keep things simple. And some of these things hopefully will stick in your brain when we're done tonight. But the three major dangers in our food supply and what we're going to be talking about tonight: too much sugar, too many toxins, and not enough good fats. We're going to hit fats hard, sugar hard, toxins hopefully hard too, if we have time. And again, just keeping these numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, clean up your carbs, fix your fats, perfect your proteins, trash the toxins. These are things you need to keep saying to yourself. And we're going to show you exactly what that means in each one of those categories. But this is what will do what it says at the top there: revolutionize your diet and your life for years to come. So here it is, genetics. A lot of people, and this is a myth, people say I have bad genes, my mom had diabetes, so will I, my parents are overweight, so that's why I'm overweight. But we always have to keep in mind that most of us have all of the same genetic tendencies. Some may have a little more than others, but it's like a trigger to a gun. They don't become dangerous or relevant until you pull that trigger. So we want to teach you how to do everything possible to not pull that trigger.
Yeah, and don't use this as an excuse. And that's what I often hear is you blame your parents and their genes because of your indiscretions and your bad choices and things such as that. Clean up your lifestyle. The laws and principles that govern your health will never fail you. If you want to talk about genetic potential, you were programmed for 80 to 120 years of vibrant life. Remove the interference, uncover the layer, stop the pollution. You are programmed to be amazingly healthy and to be extraordinary.
Yep. And it's more than just genes. If you believe it's just genes, then you're really sort of hopeless. It's like you're going through life and everything is up to somebody or something else. Whereas if you look at it, like we're saying, as lifestyle choices, that gives you a lot more control and a lot more hope for your future, right? That's a better way to live, I think, than dealing with a genetic card.
Yeah, it's not your parents' fault that you bought the gallon of ice cream and ate the whole thing by yourself.
As a snack. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about sugar, and especially when it relates to inflammation, because inflammation is at the root of every disease process known to man. You could think about high blood pressure and clogging of the arteries, heart disease. We know it's related to cancer. It's the food and the fuel for cancer, organ damage, joint pain. And if you look at something even like what's so rampant in our society, digestive issues like Crohn's, that's inflammation of your digestive system. And so inflammation is just at the root. And look at what causes it: sugar, those damaged fats that we're going to teach you how to get rid of, and toxins. All of those things cause inflammation. So when you hear things like anti-inflammatory type diets, that's what we're talking about tonight. This is an anti-inflammatory nutrition plan is what we call it, really. Okay, so we have to talk about this. Counting calories is an effective way to healthy nutrition. And every weight loss plan that I've ever seen, and again, we're not focused on weight loss. That's just a side effect of eating healthy. But focuses on calories in, calories out. If you burn off more than you take in, then you'll lose weight. But there's really a whole lot more to the story. And again, as I'm going through this, I'm going to be appealing to your common sense. And so when we look at something like this, you have a handful of almonds and a Twinkie. They're both about the same amount of calories. And I think anybody looking at this would say, well, of course the almonds are healthier. They're full of good fats. They have protein. They have enzymes. They have vitamins, minerals. The Twinkie is literally sugar and toxins, and sugar is a toxin. So it's all toxins. But even if the Twinkie is an extreme example, but let's replace that, let's say with a cup of orange juice, right? So it comes from an orange. People think it's healthy, but which one of those, the almonds or the orange juice, gives you more nutrition? It's the almonds. And so instead of looking at calories, and I'm going to teach you about label reading, we want to look at the quality of the ingredients and what type of nutrition the things you're putting in your mouth are offering to you. Why would you not go with more nutrition than less if you're going to be eating the same amount, right? So this alone should dispel the calorie myth, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you guys can read through these, but again, hitting sugar hard, obesity, acidity. I'll tell you that 1 can of soda, in order to neutralize the acidity of 1 can of soda, it would take 30 glasses of water to neutralize that. Of course, you're not going to do that, but that's how acidic that stuff is. It is deadly acidic. Inflammation, we already talked about. High cholesterol, hormonal imbalances. It is the reason for type 2 diabetes. It's a known toxin. I'm going to get to that more in a second. Heart disease, it's an anti-nutrient, meaning not only does it not bring you nutrition, but it pulls your existing stores of nutrients, vitamins, minerals out of your bone and tissues in order to process it. And we know that it promotes cancer. And so here's the thing with sugar. You don't know how much of it you're eating. People say, oh, well, I don't like sweets, or I don't have a 5-pound bag of sugar at home. But you're eating it, you're getting it. So I have an example, a picture of, I was at the grocery store and looking at, it's Naked Juice is the brand, and it's called Green Machine. So people would look at that, and it is green, and it is, a juice, and the labeling looks really healthy. People would grab that off the shelf and say, hey, I'm doing pretty good. I got my vegetables in today. Well, first of all, the thing's mostly fruit. There's a few vegetables in it, but there is 56 grams of sugar in 1 bottle of those things. So honestly, like the soda, it may be more acidic and all of these things, but it has as much sugar as a soda does. And yet you think you're doing the right thing. So in pizza sauces, in pasta sauces, ketchup, soups are loaded with sugar, believe it or not. Things that don't taste sweet have sugar in them. So I promise you, you just don't realize how much sugar you're eating.
And when we're talking about sugar, a lot of these things are processed sugars that she's mentioned, and it's hidden in everywhere. But anything that turns into sugar. So we're really talking about carbohydrates and breads and pastas and rice and all that kind of stuff immediately begins to break down sugar in the body. And it starts to have this effect, this inflammatory, acidic effect on the body, creating all these plethoras of different symptoms.
Yeah. And while we're talking about sugar, just because it's flu season, and you guys know, and I hear it too, people are suffering around the world with this flu thing. But if you think about it, starting in October, November, December, what are we eating? Sugar, 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 sugar. And all of these things, I have the top 10 reasons here, but sugar suppresses your immune system. So it may not be coincidence that come winter, January and February, people's immune systems are just wrecked from the stress and all of the sugar, that they would be susceptible to something like flu. And if you have the flu, don't eat sugar. It just feeds into it. So that's my 2 cents on flu. We could do a whole thing on
that's
that.
Another webinar.
Yeah. So don't believe me. You can go Google this. I did it yesterday. Sugar is a toxin. And look, New York Times, Time Magazine, Huffington Post, they all say that sugar is a toxin. It's highly addictive, and it is toxic to the body. These people are saying it too. It's not just us. It is a toxin.
It's like 10, 15, 20 years ago when we were talking about this, you actually had to convince people of this. Yeah, but now anymore, it seems to be.
Go Google it.
Yeah, it's all out there. Everyone seems to be readily accepting.
And this was page 1. I didn't scroll through and try to find the right thing. It was on page 1. Okay, so what's worse than sugar? And I think people, I don't know, I feel like they might know that these things are bad, but when they initially came out, diabetics were celebrating. Great, I can't have sugar, but I can have this stuff. And so it was perfect. But now I think it's a little more well known that these things are toxic too.
The problem with that is, diabetics were celebrating, but the bigger problem that I have is dietitians were celebrating.
Yeah. And so finally, we have something.
Yeah, so those are the people educating, the rest of the planet on how to eat well. And they were saying, the sugar's bad. We identify it, but here, instead of using the sugar, go with the sugar substitutes. And worse than sugar, because again, the closest to the source and natural, the closest to being natural, the healthier it is. Well, worse than sugar and further removed from that natural order and the source are the sugar substitutes, which really just are chemicals.
Yeah. And we could go on and on about these too, but just know like in something like the Diet Coke contains aspartame. That is a known neurotoxin, meaning it literally excites cells to death, mainly brain cells. It excites brain cells to death. And it's been associated with all sorts of issues, including like mimicking MS and allergic reactions and all of these things. But Splenda is the newer one on the market, and that's the brand name for sucralose. So if you're looking at labels and you see sucralose, that is artificial sweetener. And that's been highly related to things like allergies and GI issues. One study showed that it literally decimates the good bacteria in your gut. And that's not good. And so because of the fact that it's called 0 calorie, and it's 0 calorie because your body doesn't know what to do with it, that it's supposed to be for weight loss. But you can Google this too. Study after study after study, people that use these things gain more weight because you can't trick the body. It messes up your hunger mechanisms. It messes up leptin. It may not affect insulin, but it affects your body and you can't trick it, right? And so it's a known neurotoxin. Now, so people will say, well, what do I use then? And so we recommend stevia is my favorite go-to sweetener because it comes from a plant. There's many different kinds of stevia out there, so you have to be really careful. If you look at the label and you see things like dextrose and maltodextrin, that means it's not pure stevia. And dextrose and maltodextrin are sugar, so they're mixing it together.
Yeah. I'm sorry. And don't be afraid to ask us questions on the better variety of something. Because like when you're talking about stevia, you want something that has been water extracted, not chemically extracted, and doesn't have all those added elements to it. Because some of the companies, they'll put a green label on it and have to, and they'll call it stevia, and half it'll be filled with sugar.
Yeah. And you can use things like erythritol and xylitol, which are sugar alcohols. You want to be really careful with those and use them in extreme moderation because they can cause digestive issues, and it's not as natural as something like stevia. Now, a lot of people are going to things like honey and agave syrup and dates and things like that, which are a little more natural. But I'll tell you, like honey is almost pure fructose. And so that puts a huge tax on your liver, huge bump in insulin, and raise your blood sugar levels. So if you're really trying to regulate hormones, you've got to get the honey out. Even though it's natural, think about it, it's protected by bees, right? So we aren't supposed to be eating a ton of that stuff. And for people to be putting, a cup or two of honey in a recipe, it's like, well, that's a lot of fructose hitting the system at once. Dates too, they're just really high in sugar. And these things do spike your insulin. Agave syrup, don't use it. It's toxic. It's not real either.
Yeah. One of the greatest things you could do if you want to live a long, healthy life is keep your insulin levels in check throughout your entire life. And so even when you're talking about those natural sweeteners, too much of them still has that huge spike in insulin and still has the effect of everything else that we talk about. And any sugar that you don't immediately burn off, it gets stored in the body as an energy source, but it's stored as fat. Oh,
let's talk about that real quick. I just want to touch on this so you guys have this concept in your mind about being a sugar burner versus a fat burner. And we want all of us, I want to be a fat burner, right? It's more efficient. It's how your body was designed to run. But most of us train our bodies to become sugar burners, meaning we eat the sugar, and that includes the grains and the pastas and all of that stuff. And we train our body to burn that sugar. So you eat, you burn off the sugar, you get the craving because your body says, okay, we need more fuel. You eat more sugar, you burn that off, but you never get to burning the fat. And so if you really want to become a fat burner, what should you do? Remove the sugar. And then your body's forced to start to burn the fat. And that is a much more efficient way for your body. That's the desired state of your body, is to burn fat.
But it's important to note that when you're making that switch or that transition, you're going to go through cravings because you've removed this very, very addictive white substance from the body. And not only that, but once you get through that 2-week period, which is typically what the window is for your body to adapt, then you get into an effective fat burning mode. The cravings go away and a lot of the other side effects and symptoms, and then it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. People are all nodding their heads. Yep. We hear the cravings. We got our 30-day challenge people on here. They're like, yep. But we should be getting closer and closer to that time when the switch flips. Okay. Here's another great myth, that fat makes you fat. And I don't know if you got this from the sugar thing section that we just did, but it's the sugar that makes us fat, not the fat. Our body needs, craves, knows how to utilize good, healthy fats. Good, healthy fats are for cell membranes. You've heard of fat-soluble vitamins. So meaning your body needs fat to help transport them and to have your body be able to use them. Cushioning your organs, building blocks of hormones. You need those good fats. It makes up 70% of your brain tissue. So why would we be trying to eliminate the very food and fuel that your brain needs, right? So this low-fat craze that's been in effect since since the 80s has gotten us literally nowhere, except for worse.
And we've gotten fatter.
Yeah. So we're fatter, we're sicker. All the statistics are going the wrong direction. We have more low-fat foods on the shelf, and people still, if they see that low-fat label, they did a study. They sent moms out to the grocery store and to get things like milk or yogurt or whatever, and moms always leaned towards the ones with the low-fat labels. Even though we hear all the time how important these good fats are for our body, we still have been indoctrinated that low fat because of that stinking lipid hypothesis from way back when.
Yeah, and one great concept is to know that you're only as healthy as the 75 trillion cells that make up the human body, and every cell in the body literally has a fat bilayer to it that allows nutrients to come in and waste product to go out. And since we don't get any good healthy fats, then that layer, that lipid bilayer, becomes very rigid, and it affects the influx of good nutrients, and more importantly, it affects the elimination of the toxic metabolic waste. And then what happens is the toxins build up internally in the cell, and the cells begin to auto-intoxify. They mutate, they become very unhealthy, and then your body becomes unhealthy. And I love a quote from your nutrition book from your co-author, Dr. B.J. Hardick. He said that good healthy fats are the number one missing nutrient in the North American diet, and it is so true because of all that dogma and bad information, the sea of information.
Well, we wrote that book in 2009. Here we are in 2018, and it's still the same. Like, it's still the number one missing ingredient. And I didn't eat dinner yet, so I'm looking at this slide like, man, that all looks really good right now. These are basically the foods that I eat every day. And most of my diet is fat. So we'll get into that in a minute.
And you're looking at the salmon, and I'm looking at the red.
Yeah.
The red
with
meat.
The butter and the coconut oil. Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's just go through real quick. Focus on the right-hand side. And I that's what I want people to do, is instead of thinking about what you have to take away and what you're being deprived of, think about all the things you can have. So a lot of times when I tell people, hey, you can have real butter, they're doing a celebration. They don't have to eat that disgusting margarine anymore that they've been told they have to eat. So olive oil, avocados, coconuts, any of the coconut products, and coconut oil, raw nuts, seeds, or even sprouted nuts are even better. Real butter, raw cheeses and yogurt, grass-fed meats, pasture-raised eggs, whole milks, fatty fish. And then if you look over on the other side where the bad fats are, you can see all of the things. And these are things that are in all the processed foods we're eating. So that's why when you start eliminating the processed foods and focusing on whole, real foods, this takes care of itself. Hydrogenated and partially hydrogenated cottonseed, soybean, vegetable oils, trans fats like margarine, and then I have to mention canola oil, because it is not a healthy oil like it's always been touted to be. I think it's lost a little bit of its luster, thank goodness, but it's genetically modified, comes from a rapeseed plant, so it is not a healthy oil. And all of these things are things you're finding in all of the packaged products, but guess what? When you're eating out, you're getting these. You're not getting the good fats. You're getting the bad fats. So that's why if you're going to be eating out, you better be really careful. And it's better to just cook at home so you know what you're getting.
Yeah, but commercials every day, they're popping up. And so we have that bad list. And as educated as people become, it still doesn't matter, because there's a new product like literally every day that's saying how healthy margarine is, or vegetable oil, or half of these things out there. The canola oil, I still see it popping up all the time.
You'll see that a lot in health food stores, things made with canola oil and soybean oil. So you have to be careful. Okay, another myth, that fat in meats cause heart disease, cancer, osteoporosis, kidney disease. Now, I have to say that this may not be a myth, depending on what types of meats you're eating. So when it comes to conventional meat that's raised in a feedlot, that is fed grains or worse, I'll talk about that in a second, that has hormones, pesticides, antibiotics, all of these things, kept in a cage, not roaming pastures, the nutritional profile of that piece of steak versus one that has been pasture raised, grass fed, humanely raised, are completely different. And so yes, conventional beef, conventional meat does cause heart disease, cancer, osteoporosis, and kidney disease because it's not healthy. It's not natural. It looks exactly the same, but it is not natural, not the same nutritional profile at all. So that's why changing the meats is so important. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Dr. Jones today in the office. He might be on the webinar today, but we were talking about one of the healthiest, longest lived cultures on the planet. And that is the Maasai from Africa. And so they only eat animal products, saturated fats. That's all they eat. They don't even eat vegetables, and they don't eat fruit or any of that stuff. And still, they are amazingly healthy. That's a culture of people that doesn't even know what cancer is. They don't know what diabetes is. So that just blows away those myths about saturated fats being bad for you. But I think it's so important to note, just like you said, you have to qualify the kind of meat that you're eating. So again, going back to that fundamental principle, the closer to the source naturally occurring. So the grass-fed beef is what God intended meat to look like. It's not supposed to be fed the grain and all those other things, because another quote by your co-author, BJ Hardick, one of my favorites, you are not just what you eat, you are what you eat. And so that's important. So the same things that we eat, the carbs and all the bad fats and all that stuff that make us sick and unhealthy, and you start feeding that to animals, they become sick and unhealthy. And then you eat the animal, then you become sick and unhealthy as a result of that.
Yeah. So I'll mention this here since you brought it up. I used to call it grain-fed meat, but I don't even know what to call it anymore because they're literally feeding these cows stale candy, gummy bears with the wrappers still on them. You can go look on YouTube for the video on that too. But guess what? The food manufacturers want to get rid of the stuff, and the people that own these feedlots want something cheap and something that's going to get that cow fat. And they're literally eating candy, you guys. And so whatever they eat that goes onto their flesh is what goes into our bodies. And so no wonder. No wonder.
Yeah, and and the labels on that too is important too, because a lot of people think that organic means grass-fed, and it doesn't. And even grass-fed doesn't mean grass-fed. That's how confusing it is for you. So often they'll grass feed it for a certain amount of time, and then at the end, to fatten up the cow, they'll finish it with grain. And unfortunately, or gummy bears. And well, I won't. So
stale gummy bears.
So maybe the gummy bears aren't so bad, but anyway, at the end of the day, that nutrient profile that Kim was talking about, it completely changes in that last 30 to 60 days when it's grain finished. So all the good stuff, all the good nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals that was on the flesh of that cow now is dissipated. And so it essentially has the same effect as if you raised the cow on grain for its entire life, just because you grain finished it. So all the positives of being grass fed and then grain finished, the grass fed part is lost.
Yeah. So you have to be really careful. And another problem is the toxic bioaccumulation. So it takes 5 to 8 pounds of pesticide sprayed grains or candy or whatever it is to produce 1 pound of beef. So what that means is all of those toxins are getting concentrated into that 1 pound of meat. And so there's studies that show that meats can be as 100 times as toxic as something like plants. And so that's why, a lot of people become vegetarian. It's because like, oh, this meat is terrible. But they're not understanding that there's different types of meat. So I understand. In fact, when I go out to eat, a lot of times I become vegetarian because I'm so particular about the meats that I eat. And then EFAs, those are essential fatty acids. A lot of people have heard a lot that, hey, I'm probably deficient in omega-3s. Let me take my fish oil supplement. But really, if you change the meats that you eat and you're eating grass-fed beef, that is one of the best ways to balance your ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. Because guess what? When cows are eating what they're supposed to eat, those little blades of grass are really high in omega-3s. And so their ratios are perfect. And so then our ratios become perfect as well. And of course, we have to consider the treatment and the diet of the animals, which we already talked about. Okay, so we talked about beef, but same thing goes for chicken. You want them to be free-range chicken, organic, wild-caught fish. The larger the fish, the more toxic they can be. So I like the small cold water fish the best. And naturally sourced dairy, same thing. You want it from cows that are roaming pastures. Look how happy those cows are. It's pretty, right? So you want to be sourcing all of those animal products. And when people say, I'm on a budget, I don't know where to start, what should I do? This is the place to start. So change animal products first, number one, because that's what will give you the biggest bang for your buck. Are you going to pay more for them? Yes. Although they have so many stores now that that are carrying these things that are 100% grass-fed beef, because I double check and verify, that have these great sales. I won't mention any because some of you may not live around here, but you can find this stuff and it is getting more affordable. But before you go for the organic produce, go for the organic grass-fed meats, pasture-raised chicken.
Which I'll make a point just in case we forget later on. So, I mean, if you do live around the West Cobb area, then, I mean, Kim, she does these awesome shopping tours. So literally take you around to different stores and go through the aisles, show you exactly what to buy, the brand names and everything else. And these are sources that we've investigated and we trust.
Yep. Okay. And then as far as like making things easy, what I want to share with you too is like what we do. And so I'm always looking for, because we're very busy too, I'm always looking for simple ways to get the best quality nutrition in my diet. And so the Max Living, the grass-fed whey protein is awesome. So this is my breakfast probably, I don't know, 3 days a week at least. My kids will use it, you use it, everybody likes it because it's really easy. A handful of frozen strawberries, a scoop of the whey protein and some coconut milk and you're done. You're ready. So look at all of the benefits of whey protein, and it's very bioavailable and it helps balance the blood sugar. It's a rich source of glutathione and the building blocks to glutathione, which is your body's most effective detoxifier, boosts the immune system. And so again, this isn't a supplement, this is a food. And I see a lot of people going to the whey proteins because they know that it can be really healthy and they know that a good quality source of protein is important. But what happens is the whey proteins that are on the market are sometimes just pure garbage. They've been heated. They're not from grass-fed cows. They contain other additives and preservatives and weird things like sucralose, like artificial sweeteners or sugars. And so you have to be really, really, really careful. And so that's why these are my go-tos. Like, this is what I have in my house. This is what I recommend. This is what I use.
And virtually all of the other ones out there, there's a couple of them that are pretty clean, but all of the ones out there are absolutely terrible. And you have to know when you talk about supplementation that you get what you pay for, because it is pricey to go with a cleaner product. And so just keep that in mind when you're considering supplements. But I want to talk about supplements really quick. I won't take a long time, but I mean, ideally, clearly, you want to do things natural. You want to eat the food as God created it. There's something called nutrient communion where he makes something perfect. He puts the perfect blend of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients together that work like a symphony. And so when you start separating these things, they may not have the same effect in the body. So go as natural as possible. But we've damaged our food supply so much that really about 10 to 15 years, I started considering doing some supplements here and there. This would be one of those supplements where you could do a great meal replacement just by mixing a little bit of protein in a smoothie in the morning and call it a day. A great recovery drink or something along those lines to get your branched chain amino acids to build the muscle. So, but I do like to eat my food the way it was intended, the naturally occurring way. That's always going to be best, but this is a good backup.
You gonna get me a cow for the backyard?
Sure. I don't think our neighbor will like that, but
it's all good. Yeah, so until I get a cow, that's what I'm using. Okay, so here's another one. You need 5 to 8 servings of grains every day for a healthy diet. And this was the basis of our food pyramid for all those years. And now it's still in, I think they call it My Plate, 5 to 8 servings of grains every day. And that is just, it's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's so much. And your body doesn't need it. There's no disease process known to man that is a result of a lack of grains in your diet. None, nothing.
Now, remember when I first came on and I talked about being pure and sufficient, I said the things that your body needs from a nutritional perspective. That was 2 essential fatty acids. That was 8 amino acids. That was 13 vitamins and 21 minerals. Nowhere does it say that you must have these carbs. Your body can make energy sources from those other nutrients that we talked about.
Yeah. Now, can some people handle grains better than others? Yes, absolutely. But there is no downside to eliminating them from your diet. There's no downside, right? So why not do it? And we have to say too, like, even if you could make the case that grains and wheat were a good thing, you have to consider the fact that even 50 years ago, the wheat we have today is nothing like it originally was, and even, several years ago. So it used to be called einkorn wheat. It was really hard and robust. It used to grow really tall, like 4 feet tall. It was fairly high in protein and low in gluten. And so over years and years and years and years and years, now we're talking 10,000 times this stuff has been hybridized. 10,000 times. Now we have these small little plants that tip over. They have to have man involved to keep them alive. They're pliable. They're very high in carbohydrates, low in protein as opposed to the original wheat, and very high in gluten. So as he mentioned, you can get all the carbohydrates you need from something like vegetables or even
glucose.
Yeah.
Your body will break it down.
Absolutely. And so again, there's no downside to it really, but I want to talk about one other bigger problem. Most people think it's gluten, but I want to talk about one other thing.
Yeah. And before you do, I just want to just make the comment that not everybody needs to go in the advanced plan. So that would be one of the nutrition plans in your book where you cut out a lot of the carbs. It's just been the overconsumption of so many carbs, especially all the bad versions and the processed sugar and all these other things that do so much damage to the body. They literally cause degradation of physiological processes. And then you end up with a slew of different issues and problems. And for many people, they need just their body, because it's programmed to heal and recover. Like I talked about in the beginning, got an amazing healing power in the body. Use that to remove the interference, uncover layers, stop the pollution, give the body a break, and it will heal and recover. So not everyone goes on the advanced plan, but it's always a good idea to keep your body in check from the amount of carbs, and certainly always consider the quality of the carbs that you're putting inside of your body.
Yep, absolutely. So people think that wheat is bad because of gluten, but really they may not be intolerant or allergic to the gluten. It may be something else even more insidious, if you will. So if you've heard of something called glyphosate, or if you've heard of the company Monsanto makes an herbicide called glyphosate that they use on these wheat crops to keep pests and bugs away and to keep these things alive. Like I said, we need man-made interventions. But glyphosate has been linked to cancer, to massive endocrine disruption, which is your hormones. And so we know that this stuff is toxic. And in fact, the European Union has really strict levels of what can be in the food supply. And so I came across this study. It was this independent lab that tested a whole bunch of different foods that we have on our shelves. And I just picked out 2. So, well, first of all, 0.1 parts per billion, so 0.1 ppb, is a danger and is considered a threat to human health. Okay, that's been established. I don't know who established that, but it's been established. 0.1 ppb. So Cheerios, they tested Cheerios, and it had 1,125 parts per billion of glyphosate in it. And these are the little things that we give our little kids and toddlers to keep them quiet in church.
Or
right?
Adults for heart health.
Yeah, right. Or cholesterol lowering. Yep. So they're getting a massive dose of glyphosate, which is a mega toxin. And then you look at something like, I think the brand was Stacy's pita chips, 812 parts per billion of glyphosate. And so when you're eating wheat, it's not just the gluten you have to worry about. It's not just the fact that it's turning to sugar in your body and spiking your insulin and causing your blood sugar to go out of whack and causing diabetes and everything, but you're getting a massive dose of toxins when you eat this stuff.
Yeah, there's so much that you need to know.
Yeah.
Just to keep yourself healthy and keep your family protected. But at the end of the day, if you just follow that fundamental principle of eating clean and healthy, you're going to give yourself the best chance. You don't have to know all this stuff. And I'm glad you brought up the European Union because, I travel so much with the Olympic and national wrestling teams. And, when I travel abroad to Europe, I just feel so much safer in the food that I'm eating because the European Union has not just banned things like this, but they banned lots of genetically modified foods. They've banned lots of steroids, and they've banned lots of artificial substitutes and things such as that, a lot of chemical processes that typically occur. So they just eat cleaner over there than we do here. We're not protected by those same laws and principles. So you have to become your own advocate. You can no longer trust government agencies and consumer advocate groups. You need to be in the know.
Yeah, we'll touch on a couple of those things here in a minute. Okay, another myth that cholesterol causes heart disease. And, again, since the 80s, don't eat the eggs. And if you are going to eat the eggs, make sure you don't eat the yolk. Too much cholesterol in them, right? And finally, after all these years, and we showed at the seminar, Time Magazine, who kept the stance would change and change and change. But I think it was last year or maybe the year before, the American Heart Association finally said, cholesterol from food has no effect on your blood cholesterol. In fact, you can eat the eggs again, right? And so we knew that all along. We've been saying that for years and years. But what people don't realize about cholesterol, and again, I'm going to appeal to your common sense here. When a baby is born, mom produces breast milk to feed the baby with. Mom's breast milk, guess what it's made of? Mostly fats. And guess what else? Cholesterol. Mm-hmm. And so if you think about a brand new newborn baby growing, how can cholesterol be bad if that's the main ingredient in breast milk, right? And why is it one of the main ingredients? Because it helps create hormones, it helps make bile acids, it helps ensure proper neurological function. So that's important for a growing baby and for all of us, repairing and protecting cells, and for overall healing.
And so the number one reason for high cholesterol, which you already said before, was the sugar. Mm-hmm. And so here's how it works. I'll give you the skinny on it real quick. So you consume lots of sugars. That causes inflammation in the body. For the body to heal, it needs to produce cholesterol to heal those 75 trillion cells in the body. So what happens from the insult, the cells, the body knows exactly what to do. They'll send a message up to the brain, which regulates and harmonizes the body. It'll send a message back down to the liver, and it tells the liver to produce more cholesterol to send it out to the cells so it can help heal and repair those tissue cells. So your body's protecting itself from the inflammation. So when you undermine that mechanism,
like a statin,
then essentially what you're doing is you're allowing the body to stay inflamed, and you're actually causing more harm than good. Listen, don't trust us. Go look up and do your own research on this. We could do a whole nother webinar on this, just on cholesterol and heart health in and of itself. But the medical studies are pretty crystal clear on the damaging effects of things like statins. And they do talk about how beneficial and protective things like cholesterol are when the body's in need. Yep. So what Hippocrates said is you've got to eliminate the cause of the problem. And so you've got whatever caused that issue, you've got to get to it. So if the sugar's causing the inflammation, which is causing the cholesterol, you've got to get to the sugar and reduce that.
Yep. And so I love the analogy of cholesterol is like an ambulance. So there's a massive car accident, and here comes the ambulance, cholesterol, right? And so you taking a statin would be like sending that ambulance away instead of letting it come to the scene. Like that would be crazy, right? So cholesterol is not the bad guy. That's definitely a myth. And he just touched on this, but the myth is that we believe these government organizations are there to protect us, when really we know the system's just broken. There's hidden agendas. You have to really follow the circle of profits. And just like with the pharmaceutical industry, you'll see like a CEO of a food manufacturer then go and work for the FDA and vice versa. And so these people are just like moving around organizations, and there's hidden agendas, and something like GMOs right now, there's no labeling required. I mean, some of this is crazy stuff, right? And you mentioned the European Union. And so this is one of those things that should outrage you guys. And so big food manufacturers for certain products will actually have two different products. One they send overseas without all the toxic ingredients, and one they serve up here in America, because those ingredients aren't banned here yet. And so the same company is sending better stuff overseas than they're giving to us here in America. And so things like that should really make you angry.
Outrage.
Yeah, it's terrible. Okay, and we talked about a lot of these things already, but I mean, we're really talking about food that's not even food anymore. And you really have to take a step back and understand what is going on with these things. So I mentioned GMOs, the frankenfoods. I mean, we're literally taking DNA from one species of something and putting it into another. I mean, we're messing with a lot of things here that's just not good. Okay, here's another really good myth. Eating healthy is boring, tasteless, and too hard to do. And so that is why I work so hard, and I put my blog address down on the bottom there. But I have to feed a family of 5. And so, I have kids too. We like to eat. So I had to make sure that if I'm going to be sourcing these ingredients and cooking, that stuff tasted good, right? And so all of the recipes that I have on there, most of them are, short, simple ingredients, but taste really good. And so you shouldn't feel deprived. You should be excited about the meals you're eating. I know some of our 30-day challenge people are having a lot of fun getting in the kitchen, and I love it. They're posting pictures and stuff. And it makes me happy.
Yeah. I mean, the food that that you make doesn't just taste good. It tastes amazing. In the name of health, it's just strange that the food can taste as good as it does. It almost makes it kind of challenging, especially when I'm doing a serious weight optimization plan like we write up for the wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
Because the calorie theory is not the overriding principle, especially when it comes to weight gain and weight loss, but there still is some relevance. You can't eat 10,000 calories a day and expect to lose weight. And then you make food that tastes as good as it does, and that's all you want to eat, more and more and more and more. It makes it tough, but it tastes good.
Yeah. So just a little bit more on the plans, and we already covered this. So a core plan is generally like what everybody should be doing. It's the basic plan. And then the advanced plan, again, there's no downside to the advanced plan. So anyone can do it. There's only health benefits, no health consequences. But it's really for people that want to get their hormones in check and deal with the disease process, or get their inflammation down, or need to lose a lot of weight and they want to do it pretty quickly, and just health restoration. It's a healing diet. And it works for everybody. And it's just, again, simple changes. The hardest one is eliminating the sugars and everything that turns to sugar. That's the biggest obstacle. So if you can do that, and we've got plans for you to be able to, to help you do that. But then when you come to the proteins and the fats, those are both lateral moves. So just change the type of proteins, change the type of fats, and you're good to go there. So the hardest thing is the sugar and carbs, but I promise you can do it. You just need to know how to approach it. You need to be prepared, and you need to just stick with it and have your big why up there. Like, why are you doing this in the first place?
When something's important enough, you find a way. When it's not, you just find an excuse.
Yep. It's easy to find excuses. We've already talked about all of these things to avoid. And I wanted to just touch really quickly, because there's, again, so much misinformation out there and so many different diet plans, and some of them aren't good. And like the first couple ones you see there, they're good because they focus on more whole foods, which is what we've been talking about, right? So that's why they work. But when I look at something like a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle, a lot of people I know that do that are really pastatarians, right? Like they're eating pastas and grains and pizza and even soda and things like that, and saying, hey, I'm a vegetarian. So, but then I have a lot of other friends too that are vegan or vegetarian that are really focusing on whole foods and not eating a lot of grains. So that's really good. And they may be eliminating those animal products because some of the reasons we had before. So, and then you have something like paleo, which again, it focuses on mostly whole foods, but there's a lot of depending on what site you go to, you'll get conflicting information. A lot of times they don't really specify what types of meat, like they don't really specify that you should be eating grass-fed meat and wild-caught fish and things like that. It will include things like pork and shellfish, which we exclude because it's acidic and it can be really toxic and inflammatory. So, and then ketogenic diet, it definitely has its place. And so just a side note on that, with the advanced plan, you can get yourself into mild ketosis or moderate ketosis even with the advanced plan. I tested myself, I got little strips, did the advanced plan, and I was in a mild form of ketosis. So the ketogenic diet has a specific purpose. It's very good for brain injuries, for some types of cancers, things like that. But we're talking with a ketogenic diet, 80 to 90% fat, which in order to do that, you're really cutting out a lot of things like vegetables, right? And so for the long term, for the long haul over your life, I want to see people eating more vegetables than a ketogenic diet would really allow for. So it's great for short-term purposes, and certainly there's nothing wrong with eating a lot of fats. And then when you Whole30 too, it focuses again on a lot of whole foods, but it will allow different things that wouldn't be allowed on the advanced plan. So there's a lot of overlap, and then there's some minor differences too. And then when you get into some of these other ones like Atkins, Weight Watchers, South Beach, those are really focused more, and South Beach is really kind of a low fat thing, and Atkins is a low carb thing, but really, no regard with what types of meats you're eating at all. And Weight Watchers is more of a counting points. So assigning points more based on calories than quality, like we talked about.
Yeah, these are all fad diets. And
some of them aren't.
They are. They're in vogue.
Yeah.
I mean, they've come and gone, and so some are just hot right now. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't meet the fundamental criteria of eating clean and eating food that God put on the planet that's sustained. So the kind of nutrition plans that we're talking about, they're based on principles that have sustained a species since the beginning of mankind. They don't come and go. they're not hot now and not the next day. I mean, heck, remember a couple of years ago they had the Taco Bell diet? I mean, that was hot for a little while.
Like a day.
Quiero Taco Bell. But anyway, yeah, I mean, stay away from the fad diets. Just learn the fundamental principles and line up with those things.
Yeah. All right. So quick on label reading. When you look at a label, most people gravitate to the top portion that shows the calories and the total amount of fat. That's usually what people are looking at. But what I encourage people to do is go directly to what's circled there, and that's the ingredient label. And you can see, especially this in a Nutri-Grain bar, and these are still, on the market, and people will go to them because it says Nutra in it and grain, but they're not healthy at all. It's basically pure sugar and toxins like we talked about. You can see high fructose corn syrup in there, fructose, maltodextrin, sugar, glycerin, all these things. So look at the ingredient label first. If you can't pronounce stuff, you don't know what it is, it's unidentifiable, or it has a lot of sugars, then you're going to want to steer clear of that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was going to say there's a ribbon and a award on there.
Oh yeah,
so
it's probably like for heart health or something. Yeah, and you have to be careful with the marketing things too. For instance, like when you see something that says gluten-free, people gravitate towards that, but really what that means is very high in sugar. So if it says gluten-free, it's high sugar. If it says low fat, it means high sugar, right?
Often.
And so, so you really have to be careful. But here's the example of the juice that I was talking about. So you can see that it says 28 grams of sugars on there. But if you look up towards the top, it says servings per container, about 2. So you have to take that 28 grams and multiply it by 2. So you have to pay attention to that serving size too if you're looking at it. But if you look at the ingredients in here, I think there's like 2.5 apples and a banana and a half, and like it has so much fruit in it that you wouldn't be able to sit there and eat in one sitting. So it's literally like a shot of sugar to your system and just spiking your blood sugar. So you have to be careful. Trans fat free, same thing. It may say that on the label, but if you go and flip it over and look at the ingredients and see hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated anything, that is trans fat. As long as it's 500 milligrams or lower on the serving size, they can call it trans fat free. So you have to be careful. Oh, and another one, organic. Just because it's organic doesn't mean it's healthy, right? There's organic sugar, but it's still sugar. So there's organic junk food out there for sure. You have to be careful with that too. So read your labels. And then just a couple quick things like planning your meals, take a list to the grocery store, keep your basics stocked. So my freezer and my pantry always have something there that I can make if I'm not able to get to the store or if company comes over. Don't put yourself in a position where there's nothing to eat and then you feel like you have to eat something bad. Read your labels, establish your big why, like why would you be doing this in the first place? And really looking at food as fuel and for sustenance, not just for your pure eating enjoyment. When you start looking at food that way as fuel for your body, you start to look at things a little bit differently. Spend time planning and shopping, keep a food journal, that helps a lot. Anything you want to add here?
No, it's all good.
And vegetables, like we need to be getting the vegetables in, like get them in. So if you're making a smoothie in the morning, throw a handful of spinach in there, throw some kale in there. Most times you won't be able to taste it too much, and at least you're getting that nutrition in. You can also put something like the Max Greens in a smoothie, and that helps a lot. So the Max Greens, I actually went through the label a couple days ago. And it's like, this thing is amazing. There's 27 different vegetables in there, and vegetables that you're not going to grow in your garden, like cholera and like all of the wheatgrass, all of these things. And so there's antioxidants and probiotics and enzymes in there, but you're not going to be able to eat 27 different vegetables. So like just dump it in there and you get it for the day, and it's raw and it's organic. And then same thing with when you start making these changes, you could have some digestive issues. A lot of people aren't used to eating a lot of vegetables. And so they'll say, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I can't even make it through. So your body needs those enzymes to break down some of those new foods that you're eating. And so the Max GI is awesome too with the enzymes, probiotics. It has some essential oils in there and minerals that are going to help your body adjust and protect your digestive lining.
Yeah, so the Max Greens, especially for someone who has trouble getting out there and shopping or has the skill set to be an effective shopper or the time or whatever. I mean, you can get something like that. And at least you've got that that go-to, something to fall back on.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind as well.
I love max greens. I love them. Like some people have to work up to it because when you're talking about putting 27 vegetables in your drink, that's a lot, right? And so I tell people start with a little. I can do like a scoop and a half in just a glass of water, and it's awesome. I love it. If you're hungry and craving something, have a glass of that, and I'm telling you, your craving will just go away.
I'd put it in a smoothie.
You would.
Yeah, and so it's important to get these nutrients, but and we're gonna start to wrap it up here. But I want people to understand that's more important than the food you eat, because there's a principle that really governs health. So again, let food be thy medicine. It doesn't heal the body of anything. There's never been a food that healed, and there's no magic berry that grows on a magic island that's going to make you healthy and well. It's the power that made and created the body that does all of the healing. And so it's the nervous system. It's not my design. It's God's design that will take the food that you put inside of your mouth, digest it, absorb it, assimilate it, and create the living, loving, thinking clay of the human body. And so it wasn't my design. God created a brain that sends signals down the spinal cord and out the nerves to tell every single cell, tissue, and organ in your body what to do and how to work, and interpret you to your environment. And it's through this mechanism that the body can regulate and harmonize. And the nervous system is so important. It's literally encased in bone. And if all the bones in the spine are in their normal alignment, then there's no pressure on the nervous system. The body can function and heal at 100%, and your body can most effectively digest and assimilate the food that you bring into it. Now, you could eat the healthiest food, and if you have compromise to your spine, that's affecting the nervous system and affecting digestion, assimilation, absorption, and all of those things, then even if you're eating the healthiest, cleanest food, the body will still express in some dysfunctional state. And dysfunction over time, the body doesn't end up in a state of harmony or ease, but it ends up in a state of dis-ease. So more important than the food you eat is your body's ability to digest it and turn it into the living, loving, thinking clay of the human being. And that's what the nervous system does. So you've got to, if you want to be healthy, all health and healing begins and ends with a healthy nervous system and a healthy spine. In fact, if you want to talk about Hippocratic principles, Hippocrates said, look well to the spine for the cause of disease. He said, look well to the spine for the cause of disease. That doesn't make it to the headline.
Like, that's not one of his most famous quotes.
I know. His famous quote is, let food be thy medicine, or first do no harm, where the drugs that we consume in this culture are the number one cause of death in the United States of America. And so it's just crazy. So we need to understand these principles. So what I will do, just like it's important for us to share this message and these principles with you, there are people that are out there that don't know any of this information. And so it's important for you to go share it with them. You, similarly to us, now have a moral, ethical obligation to share this with other people. And if you've never had your spine and nervous system checked, that's the first and foremost thing that you must do. And so you've got to make sure your body's functioning and healing in its ideal state. Then you support the life flowing across those nerves by making sure you're eating good food, making sure that you're bringing oxygen into your body through exercise, which you have a genetic requirement to do each and every day, to make sure that your body's free of any toxic loads, and to make sure your mind and your spirit is in a good place. You do all of those things, and then you'll be expressing in the ideal state of optimum health, well-being, give yourself the best chance for optimum function, health, and healing. So how do you know if your spine's out of alignment? Well, you may be expressing any of these symptoms. I actually hate when this slide is in one of my presentations because it doesn't matter if you're symptomatic. Everybody, unless you are spineless, if you've got a spine and a nervous system, I know a couple spineless people, but unless you have a spine and a nervous system, everybody must have their spine checked, because the only way you know that you've got subluxation or a misaligned vertebrae that's compromising the nervous system, the only way that you would know that you have it is really through an x-ray, through a proper evaluation. There's a couple other methods that you can use, but at the end of the day, you've got to be checked by a professional to make sure that your spine doesn't have these issues, because symptoms are usually the last thing to show up, and maybe even sometimes the first thing to go away. It goes becoming symptom, and then when you have 60% dysfunction, that's when you experience the first symptom, and then the dysfunction over time, the body doesn't end up in a state of ease. It ends up in a state of dis-ease. So why would you ever wait till you get a symptom? You always want to make sure from the time you are born to the time that you die that your spine and nervous system is healthy and well. I take care of newborns. I'm at the birth and as soon as a baby's born, because the birth process can be very traumatic. We check those kids instantaneously. And I was just talking to a couple in my office that they brought their newborn in. I don't know how they found us, but they found their way to our office. And it was just so exciting for me that they made their decision to bring their child in. And every time that I go to take care of that child, I just applaud them, because from the moment we've taken care of them, for the rest of that kid's life, if that kid continues on with these values, then that kid's body is going to be functioning and healing in an ideal state. And that's when we end up in the bubble that we talk about, where our kids have never had an ear infection. Our kids have never seen strep throat. Our kids are graduated high school or just graduating high school. They've never had a medication. I mean, it's incredible, but that's what we see with all of our patients. So health begins and ends with a healthy spine and nervous system. And then you just plug into the other laws and principles to support the life flowing across those nerves.
Yeah, we even talked at lunch today about how eating the bad foods can affect your spine and nervous system. Like certain things can cause those traumas.
3 T's: trauma, thought, and toxin. Bad thoughts can cause subluxation in the spine. I'll make it simple. Look at someone who's depressed all the time. They're not standing up straight. They're slouched over. And so toxins from the food you eat to the air you breathe, there's something called a visceral somatic response. So when the organs become irritated through the nervous system, there's a feedback loop that's sent back to the musculoskeletal system and create misalignments in the spine, which lead to those subluxations. And then trauma is easy because it's macro trauma, micro trauma. Obviously, a fall, accident, injury can knock bones out of alignment. Micro trauma is just like for what's epidemic now is text neck. And so you get kids that are sitting there looking on their phone and texting all day long. And over time, that misalignment develops in the spine through the bad postures.
So bad food is the toxin T in that equation.
The bad food.
Yeah. And then I'll send you guys all a link to this, but I'm so happy we have our brand new store with the brand new labeling of all the Maximize Living resources. So it's awesome, so much easier to use, and you can even get set up on auto ship so much easier than it used to be. It's awesome.
And let me add this too, because it's so important for us to highlight the component about the nervous system for people to discover that principle, because that is the foundation. So if anyone lives in Georgia, they're more than welcome to come to our office, and we'll be glad to do an evaluation for them. And we can give them a health check pass. And so it'd be like next to nothing to come in and do that. If people live in another state, there's Maximize Living offices all around the world, literally. And so we'll be glad to place you in an office that would honor that same evaluation for you. So just contact us and we'll make sure we get you the opportunity to go in and get evaluated or checked.
So I'll send you guys the link to that. And then if you connect with us on Facebook, we have lots of important information on there as well. And even if you click on the little where I have the arrow here for shop, you can actually schedule a consult with us, whether it be over the phone or in the office. And for those of you local people, we have our Lunch and Learn coming up tomorrow at noon at Nature's Corner Market. We have a Patient Appreciation Day coming up. We have thermography, which is an awesome alternative to mammography, on Tuesday the 20th. So you can schedule an appointment for that. And then we have our health transformation, our community dinner that we do at Aspen Steakhouse on the 26th.
And that's crazy because we literally buy you dinner. And
we buy you a grass-fed steak.
We buy you a grass-fed
or wild-caught salmon.
Or free-range chicken. And the cool thing is our message is just to get people to understand that there's a different way you can live your life than the way Americans typically do. And there's definitely a different way that you can approach your health than the way or healthcare than the way Americans typically do. We give you solutions and it's just cool. And at the end of the day, it's fun. There's a lot of camaraderie and we show you how you can eat out and still eat very healthy, and it's on us. So it's a no-brainer. So, and there's people out there that are just begging for answers, and you could be the vehicle of change for someone. So you know what? You can come, but you can bring somebody with you. I don't care who it is. We just want to get the message out to anybody. So 1 or 100. 1 or 1,000,000. I don't care how many people come. We'll have 10 dinners if we needed to. So don't be afraid to bring friends to hear similar things and messages that you're hearing tonight, and very similar messages that Hippocrates was talking about literally 500 years before Christ was born.
Yeah, so I hope you guys learned something. I know we have some people that are more seasoned with some of these principles and some people that may be new. So hopefully you took away something, some little tidbit that you can take away and maybe even teach someone else. If you have questions, you know where to find us. I will send you information, links to a couple of things that I mentioned. I may try to dig up some little bonus thing for you guys too, so I'll send that out as well. But if you guys ever have questions, you know how to contact us.
All right. Thank you. God bless.
All right.
Max out.
Everybody have a good night.